So typically, when people go to ride roller coasters, they go to have fun or have some sort of thrill with them. Now, obviously, not all rides are going to be smooth or exciting. When I ride something, I always try to find the joy or something good in it at least, and I can tolerate roughness or a boring layout, but sometimes when you combine the two, or the ride is just that simply painful, you never want to ride it again, and it always ends up being your least favorite coaster. Today, I'll be sharing some of the worst coasters that I've ridden and explaining why they're so terrible. These are going to be all adult coasters, or at least family coasters that are meant to be thrilling of some sorts. Before I start the list, I just want to let you know that some of the rides on the list you might actually like. A good chunk of these are popular rides at their respective parks. I know they have their fan bases, but I've just had terrible experiences on them, so if you like them, I'm sorry, I don't. Starting out at number 10 is Mind Eraser at Six Flags America, a Vekoma SLC. Now, this ride isn't actually too terrible, and it isn't even my least favorite SLC, and it's definitely not the only one on this list. This is the only SLC I've ridden with the original trains, and now I understand why people love the new trains so much. Even if there's no headbanging on this ride, which, spoiler, there's definitely a decent amount of, your shoulders get beat up from the restraints digging into them the entire time, especially if you have broad shoulders like I do. I feel like even if this ride had the newer trains, it might be halfway decent, but that concept can't be proved based on other installations, in my opinion. Number 9 is Superflight at Ride Playland, a Zamperla Volair. Now, I'm not going to lie, just like Mind Racer, this ride isn't as terrible as I thought it was going to be. This is one of the two I've ridden, and the other one is not on this list, which is Soaring Eagle at Luna Park in Coney Island, New York. Now, that one was actually kind of enjoyable, but this one was definitely the worst of the two I've ridden. The concept of a compact flying coaster is cool, and the layout is definitely not bad, but it's just executed very poor. The train likes to shake a lot, the restraints are terrible, and the way the train is, like the way you lay down into the train is just not good. I don't know why Zamperla thought this train design was a good idea, but hey, it gets popular, it has long lines, and it works well for the park. I wouldn't mind riding it again, it's just that it's just not something I would want to ride all the time. Number 8, Flashback at Six Flags New England. This is an old, 3 times relocated Vekoma boomerang. Once from China and once from Kentucky Kingdom as the Bat, I'm pretty sure is what it was called. Now, honestly, this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but I wish they removed this instead of Goliath. I actually really enjoy Goliath despite its also terribleness, but it wasn't as bad as everyone makes it out to be, and the ride is intense enough to where I can get over the roughness. Now, not only is this ride, Flashback, rough, but it also has issues with saddling and the Cobra Roll from what I've seen, and this is 100% the worst boomerang I've been on. I typically enjoy Vekoma boomerangs, but this one is just not good. The transitions are jerky, they bang your head like crazy, the ride vibrates, and also jackhammers in the 2 valleys of the Cobra Roll, not including the upper one between the 2 inversions. Just terrible. I really hope they get rid of this ride and replace it with something good, and also use Goliath's Plot of Land for the same thing. If not, maybe they can get 2 separate rides. Number 7, Canyon Blaster at Great Escape. Now, like I said, I'm trying not to include family coasters on this list, but this one is just so bad that I had to include it. I was going in expecting a fun little family coaster, and it has the upgraded restraints like on Mine Train at Great Adventure, so I didn't have to worry about being super stapled the entire ride. So this ride starts out with a boring, slow, and just painful beginning. It has tons of turns that don't really add much to the ride. Each time you go into a transition or a turn, it just slams you to the side and rips your neck apart. It's just terrible. The second half of the ride is literally a lift hill and a kind of forceful helix. This helix jackhammers the entire time every time you go over a track joint or a support connection, so I can't even enjoy the forces either. The worst thing about this ride is having to wait for it. Only one train runs on the circuit and it's super slow, so it's a long period of time between loads. I was really looking to like this ride because I love aero mine trains, but this ride is just basically a rough version of Trailblazer at Hershey Park. It's boring, rough, and it's super slow. The pacing isn't good. There's really nothing exciting about this ride at all. The theming is alright, especially for Six Flags, it's pretty good. But other than that, I really don't have a desire to ever ride this thing again. Number 6, everybody's favorite Jersey Shore coaster, Pirates Hideaway at Casino Pier. Out of all the coasters that got damaged during Sandy, this wasn't one of them, but honestly, I kind of wish it was. This ride is not only rough and boring, it's just really dumb. Looking at the outside, it looks like a fun, well-themed coaster, but No. Once you head into that building, it's literally an empty box with gray track in it, and some components of the coaster, like air compressors, and that's really it. It's not even dark either, so you can see pretty much everything going on in there. The transitions are all rough, the cars are cramped, and they have a really dumb lap bar design that like come up from below your knees and over your lap. And like I said before, the ride is brutally rough. I have to put that in there twice because it's just that bad. Even at the end of the ride, when the brakes slam you to a stop and the lap bars open up, as you start to get up, the car moves forward again and bumps into like the 10 other cars in front of it, giving you one last you before you get off. And honestly, I'm not sure why this ride has so many trains or cars. There can only be like 1 or 2 on the course at a time, but it has like, I think 12 cars. And they all just sit in the station and usually empty, even if the ride has a long line. I really think Casino Pier needs to replace this with something more modern, and honestly, I think of a few things that they could add, such as maybe a GRIZZLY spinning coaster, or something like a runaway tram at Maurice Piers. Number 5, Wildcat at Lake Compounds. Honestly, I don't really know what to say about this ride. It was just to the point where it was so stupidly rough that I just laughed the entire time while riding it. Off-ride, the track looks smooth and looks like it has a decent layout too, but on-ride, the track is either butter smooth in some spots, wobbly, or in others, there's just a few points where the ride just goes, F you in particular, and throws you into your friend or the side of the train. I think I hate it less than I simply should because Matt and I were just making fun of the ride the entire time, and every time we banged our heads into each other, it was painful, but we just laughed. I really don't know what happened because they actually did retrack this a few years ago, and I'm pretty sure GCI did the retracking for this, and some parts they did an absolutely fantastic job. The first drop and the first turnaround are super smooth, they have good laterals, there's some airtime to it, but then right after that, everything just goes terrible. The airtime hill, or whatever you want to call it, right under the lift hill, basically breaks your back. It is really weird, and the rest of the ride is just wobbly, shaky, and I think Lake Compounds needs to go back to GCI or whatever company they use and demand them to retrack it, because honestly, GCI did a really terrible job. Because honestly, I think just not retracking the ride needs to be done, but replacing the ledgers and even some of the supports and reshaping some of the track may need to be done. Now, obviously, the park does want this to be a landmark, and I'm pretty sure they can't fix the ride up that much to the point where they need to start reprofiling it, so maybe that might not be an option to keep it a historical landmark, but if it is, they need to do it, because honestly, if this ride was butter smooth and had better transitions and was shaped correctly, I think the ride would be very enjoyable and would be a good number 2 or 3 at the park. Number 4, GRIZZLY at King's Dominion. Honestly, I just don't know where to begin with this ride. It is so absolutely terrible. I don't understand the people who like this ride at all. It doesn't even have an attempt to be smooth. This ride either feels like it's riding over rocks with the steel wheels on the train, and like it feels like it's been riding over those rocks for years and the wheels haven't been replaced, or like it's just trying to kill you. This ride is so poorly maintained that not just the track feels like it's falling apart, the trains seem to be falling apart too. On my first ride in 2019, one of the brutally rough parts on the ride caused what should be a good ejector airtime moment to feel like running over a pothole on a New Jersey Turnpike near Newark Airport at 100 miles an hour. Yes, I had to be that specific with that. And at this point, Mike's restraint actually full send it just came all the way up, and we were shocked. I don't typically believe people when they say the restraint came up on some rides, especially like coasters like B&M's or Intamins, but if you told me that it happened on GRIZZLY, I would just believe you. If this ride got a full retrack and got rid of those super cramped PTC trains, I feel like it would be a great ride. I don't know what it is about this ride specifically, but the PTC trains are super cramped. Also, here's a voice memo that I took while riding GRIZZLY, and you could tell that we particularly did not enjoy it. Number 3, Riddler Revenge at Six Flags New England. At this point, I feel bad for putting Six Flags New England on here 3 times, but hey, they have quite a few bad coasters, so sucks for them. This is typically said to be one of the best SLCs actually, and to be honest, I'm going to disagree with this. I rode this first as Mind Eraser when they first got the new trains, So I never actually rode it with the original trains, and I've heard that was really bad, but the new trains really improved it. And I really enjoyed it when it was Mind Eraser. After riding it again, once it turned to Riddler, I really hated it. I just absolutely could not stand the ride. Sure, there was no headbanging, but hey, this one really likes to beat the shit in other ways. The restraint continuously staples you throughout the ride. The vests tighten up too. Your legs get banged together the entire time, and if you're sitting next to someone, it's gonna hit them too. Your head also still gets hit, but instead it's from behind on the seat rest. And brace yourself for the brakes too. This one is particularly terrible, as it comes to a slamming stop, making your whole body launch forward and slam into the back of your seat. And I don't know what it is, but most SLCs obviously do this, but this one is just way worse than other reasons. I'm definitely going to have to give this ride another chance, even though I've already given it 2 chances, but ever since it became Riddler, I have just despised this ride. Number 2, Firebird at Six Flags America. I never thought a B&M would be anywhere near my top worst coasters list, but this ride is just awful. I heard horror stories about this ride when it was Apocalypse, but I figured it wouldn't be that terrible since the stand-up part was removed, and that's one less possibility of pain you have. Usually floorless coasters are smoother in the back, so that's where I rode. As soon as the train disengaged from the lift hill, my head slammed into the restraint, and the rest of the ride, with its not so interesting layout, rattled, shook, and banged every transition, inversion, and turn. Quite a few people I talked to think I just got a bad ride on this, so maybe I'll try it again. I went in 2021 after originally riding in 2019 and didn't ride it, so who knows if I'll ever ride it again, but I'm willing to give it another chance, I guess. And for the worst coaster that I have ever ridden, Roar at Six Flags America. Now, this is going to be quite a bit of a long story, and the weird thing is I actually really enjoyed this ride in the past. It has a decent layout with laterals and some floater airtime, and it wasn't really too rough, and this was back in 2019 when I first rode it. In 2021, I got the worst ride I've ever gotten on any coaster whatsoever, and I'm not sure what it was this time around, but the ride was just so brutally rough in every single valley, it was unbearable. I'm not sure why this coaster has the tightest of the PTC trains I've ridden, but it does. I usually don't have an issue with PTC trains, as I mentioned before, but on this model specifically, it feels like the junior wooden coaster trains that are on Woodstock Express at the Cedar Fair parks. Because of this, the side of the train and the seat divider were slamming right up against my legs, along with the lap bar stapling me even further in every single valley. Somewhere halfway through the ride, it felt like something snapped in my right leg, and my entire leg got that fuzzy pins and needles feeling. I just wanted the ride to be over at this point, and when the train hit the brake run, I was in so much pain that my group thought I was either joking or overreacting. During this ride, Audrey sat next to me, and since she's a lot smaller than me, she didn't have the pleasure of the seat divider breaking her leg, basically, and she didn't get as staples that I did. Once I got up and out of the train, my leg actually gave out, and I had to take a break for a good 45 minutes after riding, and I barely made it down the ramp. Roar could really benefit from getting those Millennium Flyers and a serious retracking, or they can just call RMC. However, apparently the park did retrack a major portion of the ride during the off-season, so I'm definitely willing to try it again, since I never used to hate the ride this much, and if it's genuinely smoother, I think I would actually like the ride again. I still think they need to get Millennium Flyers for it, and if they're planning on keeping the ride around, this is something they should definitely do instead of just constantly retracting it with those heavy PTC trains. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope everybody enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure you leave a like, and don't forget to comment some of the worst coasters that you've ridden or the worst coaster that you've ridden, period. I love to see everyone's opinions down in the comments, and so it's really appreciated when anybody comments. If you want to see more content just like this or other theme park related content, you're more than welcome to subscribe, and I hope to see you guys all in the next video.